Does Islam promote being passive or lazy, or does work have a special place in Islam? Assalamu alaikum and welcome to a new episode of Youth Talk. I would like to start by welcoming my guest in the studio. I have with me Sheikh Assim Al-Hakeem. It is a pleasure having you with us, Sheikh Assim.
The pleasure is all mine.
I'd also like to welcome my participants. I have to my left Abdullah, who is a computer programmer, as well as Tariq, who is a student at the Academy of Art, and Mahmoud, who is an English translator. Sheikh Assim, what is the importance or significance of work in Islam?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man ihtada bihudah. While looking at the concept of work, we have to differentiate between working to this life, to do something for our world and society, and working that is in a form of worship, pure worship to Allah Azza wa Jal. And work as a concept can be good and can be bad. So if we look at the work that has value or is harmful to a person in the measurements of the day after, the hereafter, day of judgment, we will find that if you do well, if you obey the orders of Allah, if you perform the things that you're told to do and stay away from the things that you are prevented from doing, this is positive work and you will be rewarded with good deeds on the Day of Judgment. And vice versa, if you do something bad, if you do not perform the things that Allah Azza wa Jal has instructed you to do, you'll be punished on the Day of Judgment. Now, coming down to our world, we have to work in order to do something. Whether we are positive in what we're doing, such as those who are working to feed their families, those who are studying in their universities to achieve a degree in what they're studying, or we could be working in the bad sense, and that is harming people, making wars, killing, stealing. This is also work, but again, you'll be punished or rewarded according to what you do. And it's very interesting to know that the Prophet ﷺ told us that there are two names that are very truthful. And these names are Al-Harith and Al-Hammam. Harith means that every person does something, whether to his world or to the day of judgment. So he is plowing the ground. He's doing something. And Hammam means that he is about to do something. Everybody is about to do something. He's about to do good deeds or bad deeds. Coming back to the concept of work, Islam promotes working. And that is why whenever you recite in the Holy Quran, you find that Allah talks about the believers as the Muslims as being those who believe and perform good deeds. So if you believe without any performance, without any actions, this is not enough. If you say that I'm a believer and you sit idle, you don't pray, you don't fast, you don't fulfill the pillars of Islam, then you're not a Muslim. So there has to be belief and actions, work. The Prophet ﷺ told us about those who beg, and he warned them by saying that those who beg in this world, in this life, will come on the day of judgment without pieces of flesh in their faces, which means that because they have imposed this humility on themselves by asking and begging people in this life, they will be punished on the day of judgment by coming in a skeleton-like faces, no flesh, nothing to show for. Another man came to the Prophet ﷺ asking for money. He was begging the Prophet, the messenger of Allah, may Allah peace and blessing and praise be upon him. The Prophet ﷺ redirected him, and he told him to go and buy an axe and a rope. And then he told him to go to a forest or to outside the city and shop for firewood and then sell it, and to come back to him in a week time. After 1 week, the man came in a very different situation, and he looked differently because he had money. He sold the firewood and he made money. So the Prophet told his companions and set an example of this man by telling them, this is far greater than a man coming and begging people for money. They might give him and they may not. So Islam promotes people to work.
Mahmoud, there was something you wanted to mention?
Yes, Sheikh, intention in Islam is very important. So is it enough to work to earn a living, to support myself, my family, so and so, or if it needs to be a higher intention behind work?
Okay, that's a very valid and good question. Intention in Islam is very important, if not the most important thing in oral deeds. The Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that all deeds depend on the intention. And whatever you intend, then you will be credited accordingly. This means that you could have two people praying at the same time in the same mosque, one with the intention to seek the forgiveness of Allah Azza wa Jal and to ask the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other one is with the intention to show his boss that he prays so that he would give him a raise. One in hell and the other is in paradise. Because of the intention, though, their actions and deeds are exactly the same. They're prostrating, they're bowing, they're reciting the Quran in the same fashion and manner. Going back to your question, the intention in working is very important, but it is not the only thing. And a lot of the brothers and sisters may mix the concept of intention by saying that if I work from 9 to 5, my intention has to be that this work is for Allah. And this is not possible, to work 9 to 5 for Allah, in the sense this is a very high achievement to reach if you can do that, but it's mainly or normally unreachable. But when you work from 9 to 5, you have to ask yourself, what is your intention? So, what would your intention be from your job? One, to get a salary at the end of the month.
That's right.
Okay, then why? So the answer would be to feed my wife and children. This by itself is an excellent intention. And that is why the Prophet ﷺ told us that feeding your family is a charity. So this is a responsibility. I have to do this. The Prophet nevertheless ﷺ says that if you do this, you will be rewarded. And it's a form of charity. So this is an incentive for you to go to work with an open mind, go to work happy, because you are putting the food on the table, but at the same time, Allah Azza wa Jal is rewarding for you for it. Now, the intention is very important even to those who are studying. Now, if a boy or a girl goes to school, they have to have a clear intention. And unfortunately, this is at the bottom of our list, if it exists at all. Because ask and survey any community around you. Why do children go to school? Why do teenagers go to high schools? Why do young men and women go to universities? And they all pursue a degree. Or their parents just ask them to do so. Otherwise, they're going to punish them. So, if you do not have an objective with a clear intention, then you're not going to have good results. It is quite important that we teach our kids, teach our teenagers, teach our youth that they have to have a clear intention. And this intention does not mean that you have to stick 24 hours in the masjid, in the mosque. On the contrary, live your normal life with an intention. So, if I go to the gym and I work out for a couple of hours a day, and that's a lot. But if I do this, what is your intention? This man's intention is to have a beautiful, symmetric body so that he could seduce girls, you show off, or so that he could beat those who he doesn't like. So his intention, his 2 hours in the gym would be in his sins record. He is sinful from the moment he got out of his house till the day he comes back. Now another guy is working out, and his intention is to have a healthy body so that he could perform his worships, prayer, pilgrimage, be representing Islam in a nice way. And at the same time, whenever there is a call to defend Islam, he is fit. And Islam asks you to be fit. This guy's rewarded from the minute he goes out of his house till the time he comes back. So intention is extremely important.
So Sheikh, now you have the intention to work, but actually what you face is that people are not treated equally. So you may find that those people who are maybe not qualified and they catch jobs that doesn't match their qualifications. And, you know, I'm talking about nepotism. You know, those who are, if you know someone, you will work. If you don't, but you have the intentions, and a lot of people suffer from these problems. So how could we deal with that?
This is not only in the Muslim world; it's worldwide. It's not what you know; it's who you know. Unfortunately, and this is practiced everywhere. And unfortunately, there are governments that are run through this methodology. You have presidents that are not fit to head a school, and they're heading a country. But this is beside the point. The point is that you do whatever pleases Allah Azza wa Jal. So if this means that if you are in a job and you find that people are climbing on your back to reach higher positions, people polish shoes and do things that it's inappropriate to say on TV, but they reach where they want through crooked ways and means. Well, this is not acceptable for you as a Muslim, because Islam tells you you have to work, but going to the top is not your objective. You have to work honestly. You must not lie. You must not be with two faces. You must not be a hypocrite. You must be punctual. You must be faithful, truthful, and so on. And if you get a better position, alhamdulillah. If you don't, then also alhamdulillah. And let those who did wrong get what they deserve in this life, and definitely they will get what they deserve on the hereafter.
Abdullah had a question.
Yeah, I totally agree with what the Sheikh have mentioned. Yes, it is practice all over the world that the end justify the means. But especially for Muslims, if you want to catch a job and you are qualified, but you are attached to your religion and stuff, so they might be rejected. I mean, how could we practically avoid these problems? I mean, for the entire society.
The answer is very simple: by transforming the whole society to be a Muslim society. The Prophet ﷺ told us that whoever seeks the pleasure of people over the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah, the Almighty, will be angry with him, and He will make the people angry with him. And vice versa, whoever seeks the pleasure of Allah over the pleasure of the people, Allah will be pleased with him, and He will make the people pleased with you. So you cannot compromise. You cannot say, well, it's either this and that. No, it's either this or that. It's either you're a committed Muslim, regardless of what the consequences are. I'm committed. I have red lines that I cannot cross. I have my Islamic boundaries that I may not go beyond. And this is it. Well, this is what I believe. I have my trust in Allah Azza wa Jal. Whatever they want to do, they may do. But I will not compromise my religion to seek their pleasure, because I know that Allah Azza wa Jal will punish me for that.
Well, okay, I just want to ask a question myself this time. Some people may prefer not to work, for example, and that they will stay at home or stay in the mosque or the masjid praying all the time and not working. When somebody may ask, why are you not working? I am praying to Allah. Is that, in a sense, justified at all for not working?
This concept is found in some cults that claim to be Muslims. And Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph, once went into a masjid, a mosque, and he saw a group of people sitting there. So he told them, what are you doing? Because he noticed that they did not have anything to do. They've been sitting there for too long. So he asked them, what are you doing? They said, we are al-mutawakkilun. We are those who have their trust in Allah, and they have the confidence in Allah, so we are sitting here. So he started beating them with a short stick with him, telling them that you are not having the trust in Allah Azza wa Jal. You are mutawakilun. You are just sitting there like lazy bums. No,
nothing.
This is not the way of doing it. Those who claim to have their trust in Allah, trust has to be accompanied by work. And if someone sits idly in his house and say, I have my trust in Allah, if Allah wishes, He would grant me money, food, water, everything, so I don't have to work. This is insane. This is unacceptable, because to the same person, we tell him that it's like exactly someone wanting to have children without being married or having sex. So, well, oh Allah, grant me a strong child of my own offspring. Okay, do something. No, if He wants, He could do it to me. This is not having your trust in Allah Azza wa Jal. It's like, again, standing in the middle of the highway during rush hour and saying, I have my trust in Allah, Allah will protect me. This is insane. Islam tells you that you should be admitted to a proper hospital. To be a proper Muslim, you have to work. And that is why the Prophet ﷺ said in an authentic hadith, he said, if you have your trust in Allah, real trust in Allah, then Allah Almighty Mighty will support you and provide you with rizq. He will provide you whatever you need, exactly as He does with the birds. The birds in the beginning of the day, the Prophet says, go out of their nests with empty stomachs. And they come at the end of the day with full stomachs. So the Prophet ﷺ, did say to us that the birds work because they have left their nests and they came back at the end of the day. What were they doing? They didn't go to the masjid, of course, to the mosque and sat there. No, they went looking for food. And if we have our trust in Allah and we work and seek what supports us by having our trust in Allah and by working at the same time, then I assure you that Allah Azza wa Jal will support us and give us whatever we need and ask Him for.
Well, excuse me, Sheikh Asim, according to halal and haram in working in Islam, an extension to the comment, if anybody, a man or a guy, who wants to work in something, he should work in something which is we can say that's haram by dealing and working in a hotel that sell a lot of alcohol or something like that. What should we do? What should we make in this case?
Okay. If I understand your question correctly, then I'll answer it with a hadith and comment on that afterwards. The Prophet ﷺ, and the hadith was reported by Imam Muslim in Sahih, he told us about a man traveling with lots of dust in his hair because of traveling, and raising his hands to heaven and saying, "Oh Allah, Oh Lord, Oh Rabb, Oh Rabb." He's praying to Allah Azza wa Jal to grant him whatever he seeks. The Prophet says, ﷺ, yet he is fed from sources of forbidden money, and he is nourished through sources of forbidden money. The things that he drink is from the same source. The things that he wear is from the same from the same source. How, by Allah Almighty, will answer his prayer? So the Prophet is telling us that if your income is from things that are forbidden, then your prayer will not be answered by Allah. This means that you have to go out of your way to ensure that your income is halal, is permissible. And this is very easy.
It depends on condition, Sheikh.
Elaborate a little bit more about the condition. What do you mean by condition?
That's the only job he found, for example?
He have to do this work. He can take a high salary. He can...
maybe if you put it into another aspect, that he's working and then he's asked to do this part as part of his work, and without doing that, he might be fired, for example.
Okay, let me first of all say that there is a rule in Islam which says that necessity makes forbidden things permissible. But you have to define the necessities.
Yeah, necessity makes no rules. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about the Islamic concept. Let's not get into these concepts. Now, coming back to this rule and applying it here. You mentioned the example of a person working in a hotel, and he serves alcohol, pork, things that are not Islamic. So is his job or his income is permissible? The answer would be no. You say, if I understand, that this is the only job he could do, or this is the only job available at the moment. Well, actually it is not. But this is the only job that pays what he is looking up for.
That's right.
There are thousands and hundreds of jobs that are lower in salary, but this doesn't suit me. It's exactly the same in the case of bankers. You know, there are two types of banks: Islamic banks that deals with Islamic transactions, and non-Islamic banks, which are the majority, unfortunately.
Because it
gets
high interest.
A lot of the Muslims work in the non-Islamic banks, and whenever we tell them this is forbidden because you're taking interest and it's a major sin, they say, well, we can't find an alternative. But they do not complete the sentence. We cannot find an alternative that pays the same salary. But there are lots of alternatives that are 30% less, 40%, and even 50%. Here comes your trust in Allah Azza wa Jal. If you trust the Almighty, then you should leave this income that is not permissible for you and look for a pure income. And in my point of view, people don't starve to death in our societies and communities. Maybe if they were in Somalia, maybe they do. But in where we live, you'll always find a Muslim that gives you a loaf of bread, if not half a kilo of meat and some shrimps and dress and cocktail dresses.
I'm not quite sure about the shrimps.
Well, it depends if you're in a coastal area or not. But this is the case. See, you have to look at the things that pleases Allah, not pleases you. Because the sky is the limit. No matter how high your salary is, you'll always find a position that promises more, but with a little bit more compromise from your side in your religious aspects.
Mahmoud?
Now, Sheikh, I'm going to talk about some common phenomenon nowadays. That's it. Now, I work in a company or organization, and I'm totally honest and objective to myself, and I find myself qualified for the job. But I'm required to pay a sum of money. If not, I'll be kicked out. I will work out from this company without having the job. So it's permissible to pay that sum of money to have the job I see I'm fit for it.
So it's a bribe.
In a sense.
That's a bribe.
It's a bribe. No,
Even
okay.
if I find that the job is mine, I fit for it, and it's my right to have it.
Okay. Now, paying bribe is something that is considered in Islam as a major sin. And those who pay bribes, those who receive the bribes, and those who are witnessing the bribing process are all cursed by Allah. And this is a major sin. But when we come to this case where you have a job opening and you are applying for this job and your HR manager wants a small something under the counter for him to accept. Now, you are the victim, but you want to make yourself also the judge, because you are claiming that you are the most qualified person, and this is not to you to judge. Now, say your desire is influencing your judgment. You want the job because it pays well, and at the same time, you're convinced that you're the best man around, but this is your own thinking, and this is your own estimation. You may be right and you may be wrong. Coming back to the situation again, if you bribe this HR manager, then bribery would be common to the extent that you also have to bribe the man who issues your driving license, you have to bribe the man who gets a phone into your house, and so on. Then this means the end and corruption of
the cycle
the
just
society.
goes on and on and on. Okay, we've got a break now, and we'll be back in a few moments after this break. And welcome back, Abdullah.
Actually, there's very big problems for people who are looking for work. They have the good intentions and everything, but actually, their education actually doesn't match. If their education is very, very good, so actually here they don't have the opportunity. So they think of immigrating to another country. I mean, those who are very high qualified engineers, doctors, and those who are they have the high level education, so they are going to immigrate. So how could we in our country to start to think to benefit from those people and give them the opportunity here to work here to for the good for our country?
I think you're addressing the question to the wrong man. See, this is the role of the governments and the role of those who are on
societal
top.
organizations themselves.
Yes, but I would expect you to ask me on the role of immigrating to work
in another country.
In another country, because this would, what I thought of at the very beginning when you asked a question, and if I may
Of course.
answer
Please,
this
go ahead.
question, I think that traveling to work in another country is permissible simply because this is what the Muslims in the early times used to do. The Arabs at the beginning of time were traders, and the Prophet ﷺ himself went to Syria and to the Sham area up to the north of Arabia for a trade. And he was a merchant himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All the companions of the Prophet were also merchants and traders by nature. So traveling by itself to seek a better opportunity for work is acceptable as a concept. It is not depending on the effect it has on a Muslim. So if a person goes to a Muslim country where he is free to practice his religion, he is not oppressed, and at the same time he has a good opportunity for a decent job, this is one of the best scenarios possible, because then you have a good income and you are leading a comfortable life. The question arises when a person goes and travel to work in a non-Muslim country, where the temptations are endless, where Sharia, the Islamic law, is not applied, where there are threats to his faith and belief, then the answer would be going to such a country is not permissible, because although your income will improve, your religion will deteriorate, and the level of iman, of faith, will drop dramatically. And in so many cases, and I've witnessed cases like this, people abandon their religion. They're overwhelmed with the pressure of the peers, with the environment, the society. They have to give in. They're hopeless. And then they start to imitate and copy the Western way of thinking, ideology, and they are transformed into being something other than Muslims. So, if they are sure to preserve their Islam and Iman, they can practice their religion freely, they are immune to the temptations around, working in such an environment is permissible. Otherwise, it's not.
But how can they, excuse me, how can something like that be measured? I mean, to see whether or not you will be able to protect yourself from the temptations around you in a different society. Okay, the oppression part, that can be found out. But how can you actually know if you're going to be able to protect yourself from the temptations around you and be a strong Muslim?
Everyone knows his own capabilities.
So it's an individual thing?
Yes, of course. And that's why I'm giving him the choice. If you can, then it's okay. Though, going to Muslim countries is far greater choice. But if you have no choice except to go to this non-Muslim country, to work in Europe, for example.
And if you have a strong enough faith in...
Yes, definitely. And that is why scholars say that traveling to non-Muslim countries is not permissible unless 3 conditions are fulfilled. 1, that a Muslim has to have a certain level of virtue and fear of Allah that prevents him from indulging himself in temptation, desires, lust, whatever. 2, to have a level of knowledge that prevents him from accepting any bad ideas.
External influence.
Yes, that may affect his religion. You know, you could find someone coming to you, if you don't have a strong knowledge of Islam, and telling you that Islam promotes Trinity. And that is why you say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is the name of the Son, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. So this is and the guy said, duh. No, this is unacceptable. You have to have the proper knowledge that allows you to defend yourself and to refute these bad ideas that come to you. Thirdly, that you have to have a legitimate purpose for going to these countries. So if you go there for just the sake of tourism, I just want to have fun and enjoy myself, this is not possible or not permissible, because you have lots of Islamic countries that you could visit in tourism. But if you have a legitimate reason such as studying, looking for a job, trading, medication, you have to go there because they have the best hospitals, a proper legitimate reason, if these 3 conditions are fulfilled, then it's okay for you to travel. Other than that, stay where you are among the Muslims, among your brothers.
Okay, Sheikh. Now I dismiss the idea of going abroad for working. What if I stay in my country and working for non-Muslims in my country, for example, for multinational companies?
Okay.
Is it right or wrong? What about the income? Is it permissible to eat from or what?
The income depends on the activities of the company.
That the company itself does.
So if the company, for example, is an industrial company that produces pipes, so this is a legitimate line of work. So this is permissible. Now, your boss or your the top management are non-Muslims. So is it permissible for me to work under non-Muslim management? The answer would be yes, it is. There's nothing wrong in that. And the evidence of that is that Salman al-Farisi, may Allah be pleased with him, when he was abducted and sold as a slave, he was sold to a Jew. And his master, his owner, who was a Jew, used to ask him to work in his farm. So he worked in his farm, and the Prophet ﷺ, though he was a Muslim, Salman was a Muslim, and his boss was non-Muslim, he did not tell him you have to leave work or do something or kill your boss or whatever because he's a non-Muslim. No, it's okay. Especially nowadays with this globalization and as long as the activity is permissible and there's nothing forbidden in your work, then it's permissible for you to work.
I think let's move to another point, the working environment. I mean, a lot of people, for them, the working environment defines how much they love their job and how successful they are and so on and so forth. What about mingling or mixing with colleagues from the opposite sex, with females, for example, in your working environment? Are there certain rules? Are there degrees? Would something like that prohibit you, for example, from taking a certain job?
Whoa.
3-in-1 question.
See, no, the problem is that this issue has so many attachments to it. And you have to look at it from a holistic point of view. You cannot come and say no, or you can say yes. You have to explain and elaborate so that people would understand why we are taking such a stand. Now, working with the opposite sex is forbidden in Islam. We are told in Islam to segregate between females and males. And this is portrayed extremely loud and clear in the prophetic sayings. For example, in a masjid, in a mosque, the Prophet ﷺ says that the best rows of men are those at the very front, at the beginning. And the worst rows of men are those at the very end. And the worst rows of women are those at the very beginning, at the very at the front. And the best rows of women are those at the very end. Which means that Islam wants to keep, though we are in a sacred place, a place of worship, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that keep the men as far as possible from the women. In Islam, we are told that a person must lower his gaze from the opposite sex. So men are not supposed to look at women. Women are not supposed to look at men if they are complete strangers. This does not apply to your wife, although sometimes one would say, whoa, I should lower my gaze, but no, I was just joking. Your wife, your sister, your daughter, your aunt, these are all women that you are not allowed to marry, so they are mahram. You can look at them and they can look at you. I'm talking about strange women. You have to lower your gaze, and women have to lower their gaze as well. We have so many things in Islam that tells us that women are, if mixed with men, they are cause of temptation. And this is crystal clear. Now, I could hear, but I don't have supersonic hearing, but I could hear people saying that, listen, we've been to the West, we've been to the States and Europe, and we have lots of men working with women nothing happened. So you guys are sick. You're thinking that things would happen. Well, I'll tell you, it's not the case. But it did not click. You could work with 1,000 women, and maybe nothing happens. Not because it's a safe environment, but simply because nothing clicked. And I'll give you a very crystal clear example that was on the whole world TV screens. A few years back, a head of a country, a very well-known superpower, was accused of fornicating with an interim. Now, this guy had a beautiful wife, he had a big position, but still this did not prevent him from cheating. And why was that? Because he was working with the opposite sex. Now, you cannot blame Muslims for being rather safe than sorry, because this is what the Quran and Sunnah tells us to do. Let the woman work with women, and let men work with men. Coming back to your question, which I just had to, set the platform for it. If you are working in a company that has females, you should isolate yourself from them as much as possible, in the sense that it is forbidden for a man to be alone with a woman in one room. Because the Prophet tells us that there's a third person with them, and this is Satan. And don't tell me that she is ugly. Don't tell me that she is 10 or 15 years older than you are, because it's well, whatever. It is not what you feel towards her. Maybe you have no feelings towards her. But can you guarantee that she does not have anything towards you? And we've heard so many cases of nurses marrying their doctors, of stewardesses marrying their captains, of maids marrying their boss in the houses. And this is all because of the marriage is a good thing. It's a positive thing. We've heard so many things about, relationships that did not end in marriage. So this is completely forbidden to isolate.
Well, we already know that males and females should not be mixed together in the workplace. But assuming that this is on current situation, for example, how should one deal with it?
Well, first of all, it's very unfortunate if it's the current situation. My best advice would be, if you can look for a better job, then go ahead. If not, this is the only job available, then there are boundaries that you must not go beyond. There are red lines. For example, as I stated before the break, you must not be alone with another female in a room. So this is even in an elevator. And so many times I'm encountering this situation. I go into an elevator, and while I'm going up or down, it stops in the floor, and in comes a girl or a lady or a woman or whatever. So then I, without any hesitation, I have to go out. It's either me or her, not both of us alone in an elevator. One would say, "Come on, you're being, this is too much." I said, "No, it's not." Because so many cases, the elevator is stuck for 3 or 4 hours. And then what happens? And again, I'm not doing this because I don't know myself, or I don't trust her. I'm doing this for the best of the community. It's the instruction of Allah and of the Prophet ﷺ. So don't be alone with a woman in a room. 2, if you work with a woman, don't look at her in the eyes. In the sense, try to avoid looking at her unless it's necessary. One would say, "Well, this is rude." Well, it's rude, but this is what keeps me away from her. This is what puts a partition between me and her. But imagine if I dissolve myself in the work environment and I start looking at her, smiling, joking, and maybe doing something beyond this just to be friendly and kind. This is unacceptable in Islam. So you have to draw the line here. If I work with the opposite sex, I would never ever touch them at all, because the Prophet ﷺ told us that it is better for one of you to be stabbed in his head with a big iron nail rather than touching a woman that is not permissible for him. So shaking hands, and shaking hands is the moderate way of saluting, but nowadays the kissing is. So again, where to draw the line? So touching is completely forbidden in Islam. Now, by saying that you're not allowed to be alone with her in a room, if there are men and women with you, it's a different story. Again, putting the scenario that this is the only job I have, and I have to do it. The more you are away and segregated from the opposite sex, this is the Islamic way of doing it. Imagine that in Islam, a woman must not wear perfume because men are so sensitive to women, more than women are sensitive to men. And this is understood easily if you have a group of men and a bombshell goes in that room. You know, a fine woman, you know, beautiful. Lots of the heads will be turning. Not all of them, but lots of the heads will be turning. But if the opposite took place, if you have a room full of women and one fine, handsome, muscular man comes in, very few heads would turn. So Islam plays a great role over the chastity of women, of them being properly dressed, not being perfumed, not showing their beautiful side to men.
So, what about the women who take a high position in the community, who are your judge? You have to be under the judge. What can you do in this case?
A judge is really not the
Ultimate.
It's exception, really.
Yeah, it's
you don't have
exception,
in many Muslim goods, don't you?
Yeah, actually, the position of judge is not allowed for a woman to assume, because it means that she has to give verdicts in things that she is unequipped to do. She has to mingle with men. She has to mix with them, and probably she has to be alone with some of them. And the Prophet ﷺ said that this is not acceptable. But if the CEO were to be a woman, for example, of a company, and you're working in, and you're a manager, you work in this environment, but with these boundaries protected. So if she says, well, come to my office, I want to have a man-to-man meeting. Say, well, change the man. You're a woman. I can't have this meeting with you. Unless there is someone else. We can do it by a phone conference or video conference or whatever. Send me an email.
Yeah.
But do not be alone with her. Do not talk to her, even in the presence of others, you know, taking your freedom and liberty to talk and look and joke and smile and do whatever you think. Because by nature, and this is natural, come on, it's not only me, the one with the suspicion and with the doubts. It's natural that a man would like to impress others. As a man, I would love to impress women. And as a woman, she would love to impress men. She would love it. Any woman would love someone coming to her and say, whoa, you're wearing your hair in a nice way today. What's that nice perfume? Lovely dress. You're making it more lovelier. And so on. Thanks. And a man would like someone, and this happens to us, whenever we meet another man in the middle of the road, and, you know, I pull up my stomach. The minute I shake hands with this, what's happening? He goes, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm fine. And the minute he walks away, and then I let go my stomach. This is human nature. So if you work in such an environment, eventually this is what will happen. So you can have a boss that is a female, but keep the boundaries of Islam protected.
But at the end, work is a sacred part of Islam, in a sense. Not necessarily the word sacred, but...
Okay.
No, I'm not talking about specifically to work with females. I'm talking about work in general.
Yes, you
to
have
rectify the point.
It's true. You have to work. Because if you don't work, you are not adding value to the society. And each and every individual in Islam must add value to his community and to his society.
Okay, on that note, I'll end this episode of Youth Talk. Sheikh Asim, Luqman Al-Hakeem, it's been a pleasure having you with us. Thank you for joining us. I'd also like to thank our guests, Abdullah, Tariq, and of course, Mahmoud. Thank you all for joining us as well. Youth Talk will be back again soon with a new topic, and until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
Ooh.